Hi listeners, are you ready to elevate your skills in investigating psychological health and safety hazards? Our brand new 10-week Psychological Health and Safety Investigations program is designed for safety professionals and individuals looking to build confidence and capability in handling complex workplace incidents. Over 10 weeks, you'll dive into practical content, exploring how psychosocial hazards contribute to incidents like physical injuries, unsafe practices, workplace bullying, and more. With a focus on Australian laws, this program caters to both local and international audiences. Don't miss out. Enrol today for Cohort 1, starting 19th of September. Now, onto this week's episode.
From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. With workplace mental health becoming a safety prerogative, this is the source of information on psychological injury prevention and health promotion.
Listeners, welcome to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. My name is Ian Lewis, and I'm one of the hosts of the show. The aim of the podcast is to rapidly increase knowledge of psychological health and safety in organizations all across the globe. And we get to speak with guests who are leading the way in this area. And so today we are recording from Western Canada, and I'm so pleased to have Leora Hornstein as my guest. Welcome, Leora.
Hi, Ian. Thank you so much. It is such a privilege to be here today.
Yeah, and I'm really glad to be able to speak with people like you who are doing psychological health and safety, mental health in the workplace, whatever we call it. It's called by so many different things, so many places, and I'm really glad that you're able to come and share your experience personally, but also the experience with your present company. So maybe tell us a little bit about you and your career path and the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say this is a real privilege because for many years now, I have been an avid listener of the podcast, and I have learned so much knowledge and taken in so much wisdom from the guests of the show. And I feel like this is a moment to hopefully pay it forward and share some of my experience as well. And not just for the Canadian version, but for all the psychological health and safety podcasts around the world. It's such an excellent resource. So yeah, a little bit about me. I am a registered nurse by background. After I finished my degree, I went on to specialize in occupational health nursing. And I knew immediately that I wanted to be part of the workforce and organizations and contribute to a public health solution that was beyond what we would consider to be traditional nursing, and had a real keen interest from the get-go in health protection and illness prevention, and really saw that opportunity in workplaces to do just that. And so I've been at Cenovus since 2016 now, and worked in different roles, always something to do with occupational health, disability management, health management, and since 2019, really specialized in well-being here as the well-being specialist at Cenovus. So I consider this work to be an absolute honor and privilege, and over the years have seen the real seeds that we've planted all the way back being able to start to grow and flourish. And this work is a tremendous privilege.
That's wonderful. And you've been with them for a long time, like that's 8 years. And you mentioned about planting seeds and you're seeing things flourish. That's just great. You first popped up on my radar because I was speaking with Marianne Baton, one of the past hosts, and she had mentioned that Cenovus was one of the organizations nominated for the Workplace Wellbeing Award through the Canadian Positive Psychology Association. And I understand that the work you've been doing with Cenovus, and Cenovus has been recognized by others as well.
Yes, it's true. I have to remind myself and feel very grateful for the recognition we've received as an organization through the Workplace Wellbeing Awards last year. So that was 2023. In 2021, I was awarded with a Young Woman in Energy Award. And in 19 and 2020, I was awarded with the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers Industry Recognition Award. So yeah, have had lots of privileges along the way too.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think as we go through the podcast, people are going to get a sense of who you are and why you're recognized like that. But Cenovus, it's maybe not a household name all across the globe, but maybe tell our listeners a little bit about Cenovus, what your organization does, who's in your workforce, and maybe some of the challenges that your workforce encounters.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cenovus is one of Canada's largest energy producers. So we have about 8,500 staff operating oil and natural gas production through Canada and our Asia Pacific region, as well as working in upgrading, refining, and marketing operations in Canada and the US. And so within our industry, we have some unique and some not so unique challenges. We have, a very diverse population. We are a global organization, and of course, that presents its own unique challenges in this role to try and meet and match people where they are at. And some of the challenges our workers might face. There was a study done by the University of Alberta in 2019 that highlighted some of those unique challenges that oil sands workers face. And it noted things like additional stress, loneliness, increased risk of diagnosed health conditions, challenges with self-care and relationships, and keeping up those healthy eating and sleeping routines because of shift work and camp work. With that, we have a large safety-sensitive population that we are, very, very focused on safety here at Cenovus, and helping to ensure that our workers are able to keep their minds on task to protect their own and the safety of others. So while we do have roles that present with these challenges, we recognize that every role, every organization comes with its unique psychosocial hazards and risks. And the opportunity there is really to be able to assess and mitigate those appropriately. We also know that the workplace is, has an opportunity where we, if not managed, can be a real risk to mental health and well-being. And the reverse is also true. And so I think given the size of our organization, we have a real opportunity to make a difference and contribute positively to people's mental health and well-being. And my aim and my goal is always in thinking about leaving people better for having worked at Cenovus, despite which role and where they work and which location, than they were before they worked here.
I love how you're framing that as an opportunity. On one hand, you say there's a University of Alberta study that says, you know what, working in the oil and gas sector has its risks. And we've heard of risks for shift work, fly in, fly out type workers, people who are living away from their families, people that have varied schedules, and heard about substance use. I think that's one of the classic sort of issues that has been in the Western Canadian oil and gas scene for a long time. But you're saying we have an opportunity because we have a large and diverse workforce. We have an opportunity to have people thrive here, and eventually, when they're done their time at Cenovus, whether that's retirement or otherwise, is that they are better off for having been at Cenovus. So that's exciting. Like that, you say, you frame it as an opportunity, and I love that.
Yeah, and it's so amazing to me, and I'm always inspired when I journey out to our remote locations, even to our outside of our head office here, and hear the stories and see how that connection between our workers, especially our camp workers, because they are together for so many hours and long stretches at a time, And that connection, and then, in listening to the stories, these individuals have been working with us for, like, at a minimum, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Like, their whole lives are, just part of this organization. So it's, yes, there are some challenges, but also such an opportunity to make a difference. And it's probably my nursing roots, and I think of this much as a public health role, but we do have opportunities as workplaces to really, really help people with their well-being.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, the opportunities. Now, I think there's always a lot of focus on, well, what are the problems out there? And certainly poll number 20 for Mental Health Research Canada that was done earlier this spring, the StatsCan 2022 Community Health Survey, taking data from those, we can sort of estimate that at any one time, 18% of Canadians are experiencing a mental health disorder and they meet diagnostic criteria. 11% of people would have missed work in the last week because of their mental health. 28% of people report their productivity is lower due to their mental health. I could guess, but in your words then, why has mental health become a focus for Cenovus? You've talked about planting seeds and now seeing them grow, but why has mental health been a focus for Cenovus?
It's such a good point, Ian, and it's always important that we recognize and really feel what those numbers are, right? It's one thing to read the research and see the statistics, but when we just stop for a moment and put ourselves in those shoes and think about the people that we live and work with and our family and our friends, we realize that every single one of us is either personally impacted by mental health, mental illness, mental health challenges, or we know of someone who is impacted. For us here at Cenovus, safety is our number one priority. And so connecting mental health and recognizing that it's important that we honor people where they're at, that we recognize that everybody comes to work with their own unique stories, which may or may not be a visible part of who we're seeing, but that we are all made up of those stories. And when we recognize, acknowledge that all of us have those, where first of all, we all have mental health the same way as we have physical health. But when we recognize and note through those statistics that we're all impacted in some way, then we can do our best to acknowledge, to normalize, to broaden the conversations, to make sure that everybody has the right skills to know how to recognize and support somebody who may be in a place of challenge. And that is how we build a safe and supportive culture here at Cenovus, where people feel that they can thrive and be their best selves in and outside of the workplace, because that's how we not only, maintain our and have above average business performance, but that is how we contribute to our health of our communities and our society at large.
Right. So you're really looking saying that you as an employer have so much impact, and be aware of what people are coming to work with. Treat everyone well because you're impacting your community. Earlier you talked about safety though, and what does mental health have to do with safety? Like you have a lot of safety sensitive work where lapses in judgment or mistakes at work can have serious consequences for life and limb and safety. But how's mental health and safety intertwined at Cenovus then?
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to the day where we talk about safety and it's just an absolute given that we are talking about physical and psychological health and safety, and that it's one and the same. Because when organizations realize, kind of, I think of it as a three-legged stool when we talk about mental health, well-being, and physical safety, and they are completely interconnected. So when we, think about programs and initiatives that to foster a holistically healthier, safer, and more productive work environment. And when we do, we realize several benefits. And the first is we talk a lot about psychological safety, right? So cultivating an environment where people are more ready to raise concerns, ask questions, and point out, even express if they're not feeling like themselves. And of course, that helps to build trust in an environment where somebody might speak up about not being able to perform a safety sensitive task. Second is reduce stress and burnout. And we know that when people experience that overwhelm and that burnout, it can be a contributor to accidents and errors happening. When we are supporting people's mental health and well-being, they are more likely to be focused and less likely to make mistakes. And the third is around that improved job performance, productivity, and communications. When we have that interconnectedness, we see more engaged and more effective workers, of course, less likely to make mistakes and have accidents. And then that focusing on those inclusive policies and practices where people feel more supported and have that cohesive culture and that inclusivity when people feel that they are valued and a sense of connection and that they are part of something and a community. We see that increased satisfaction, decreased turnover, and greater safety performance as well. So here at Cenovus, we have a true, strong, dedicated focus on safety culture, building our safety culture, our organizational values. We have a Fit for Duty program, and of course, our mental health and well-being strategy. And those just exemplify the deep connection between all of these spaces.
It's wonderful. And I know that the energy sector in particular has led the way for a lot of industries in the health and safety area, dating back, well over 35 years, where the energy sector had a reputation of having high rates of traumatic injuries. And when things would go wrong, they went wrong in a really bad way. And so health and safety, I think the health and safety focus in the energy sector really had ripple effects to construction, transportation, all the other people who are working with the energy sector. And the energy sector has been a real leader that way. And so it sounds like mental health has been on Cenovus's agenda for quite some time. How did mental health begin to become important? Because there's a lot of organizations for whom they're like, yeah, we don't know where this mental health fits, but how did it become important for Cenovus?
Yeah, so really great question. And I would say in and around 2017, it became a real focus for our executive leadership team. And that was a time that they had turned to me and recognized the need for a stronger focus on mental health. We had some really visionary leaders, we still do, who recognize that connection to mental health, to caring for our people, to create that culture of care, that connection between mental health and safety that we just spoke about. And it was at that time that they, came to me and asked for the stand-up of our mental health and well-being strategy. We also they were able to demonstrate their commitment and made a significant increase to our psychological health benefits, which connected into our strategy and showed that real, action behind their words of saying that this was something that was important and meaningful to the company. And still, 7 years later now, it still remains a real strategic focus for our organization, committing in words and in action to what we're doing to support mental health and well-being for our people here at Cenovus.
Right. So over the last 7 years, what are some of the things then that have been going on then to increase mental health literacy and because you mentioned having conversations about fit for duty, conversations about how are you today? Are you feeling fit for duty and whatnot? And that psychological safety stuff just doesn't drop down out of a memo from the sky. It really has to be actioned at a frontline leader level. You've got to have frontline supervisors and managers who generate trust and communication. And so what you're talking about is sort of it's not like a beginner mental health strategy. It sounds like there's been a lot going on. So I'm just kind of wondering what has been going on.
Yeah, it's interesting when you ask that question, right? And we have an opportunity to look back and think about all the pieces that have connected and the hard work and the dedication from our executive team to leaders at all levels to, my team, myself, and our employees, because well-being and mental health, it happens at all levels across an entire company. I always say, I get asked a lot that question of where does well-being live and who does it live with in an organization? And of course, the answer to that is everybody. We all have an accountability. So when you step back and you look and see how far we've been able to go through the journey of the last 7 years, and when I think about it and thinking about answering that question, it really has been our strategic approach that has supported that maturity of our program. I don't like to call it a program anymore because it is just a part of our operations and woven into how we do things here at Cenovus. So it's not about, when I speak about this as being, when we think about mental health or well-being at an organization, it's important to think about the worker and the work. So it's about thinking, about what are those system level approaches that we're taking? What is that culture that we are fostering and the environment that is helping to support mental health, to protect the mental health of our people, to cultivate that safe and psychologically healthy environment that our people are coming to work in. It's about aligning to the 13 factors and thinking about what we're doing to promote mental health and well-being. And then about the worker too, right? So what are those interventions? How are we helping to empower individuals to take care of their well-being? How are we giving people the right awareness and skills and learning and development opportunities and that helping to shape positive behaviors to empower individuals to want to and to take care of themselves as well. So it's a real combination, and we've seen a lot of research evolving more recently about the effectiveness of workplace well-being programs and mental health programs. And what we see and what we know is that focusing on only the worker and the individuals just doesn't work. We really need that holistic, comprehensive approach when we, speaking of psychological health and safety, when we are thinking about what we're doing to prevent harm, to protect our individuals and to support our individuals holistically.
That's right. Yeah. And so you covered a lot of ground there. And you mentioned you got to pay attention to the work and the worker, not just exclusively the worker, which is 100% of, what we believe here. And we talk lots about on the podcast. And you mentioned, examining the work and using the 13 psychosocial factors or workplace factors as a way of sort of understanding the work. And those 13 factors for the non-Canadian group come from the National Standard of Canada for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace. But looking at those factors like work-life balance, workload, excellent leadership, and organizational support, psychological support, lots of ways to look at it. But so this has been on the agenda for Cenovus since 2017. That's a sustained commitment. So along the way, you must be seeing some positive effects for it to continue on the executive leadership's mind? Is there any sort of ways you can sort of, at a really broad strokes, because it's a large organization, help listeners see like what are some of the positive effects that have been observed around Cenovus?
Absolutely. And that's a great privilege I have every day because I see these tiny little seeds that we planted so many years ago. And then I hear, for me, Ian, we obviously look at our data, just like most organizations do. So our, benefits data, our employee family assistance provider data, our well-being program data, our organizational health survey data that shows very positively that what we're doing is making a difference. But for me, what's really meaningful is when I hear the stories. And of course, when you're working in the space, it is about putting together, the anecdotal, the quantitative, and qualitative data and making a story with that. But for me, it's those personal stories that I hear that I know it's making a real difference. So, for example, we've partnered with the Canadian Mental Health Association with their workplace mental health program called Not Myself Today. Since 2018, we've been partnering with them. And as the program's title, Not Myself Today, the idea is to reduce stigma and increase the conversation around mental health and create those psychologically healthy and safe workplaces. And so for me, it's really, really impactful when I hear, sometimes it's just in passing, sometimes it's directly to me, and individuals will say, just not feeling like myself today. And we've given people that language and that approval to say, we recognize that we are not all on our A game every day. And again, back to our safety sensitive focus, that's a really important way for our safety sensitive employees to say, my mind is not quite on task today, and I am better performing different job duties today that is going to put me at risk or somebody else at risk. So that's a really big one. Someone shared with me a story the other day, and this was an individual who has been a real champion of mental health and our Not Myself Today program many years ago. This individual was working on a project, very, very intense, long duration, high risk, safety sensitive, and many days. Was actually a turnaround of one of our assets. And the individual said, for all the years that they have been talking about mental health and encouraging people to look out for themselves and one another, it was incredibly powerful when somebody turned to this individual and said, hey, how are you doing after X number of days on this project? Because they noticed that this individual was experiencing signs of some declined mental health. And so the individual said for all the years that they have championed this work and mental health, they never realized the impact when somebody cared for them and was looking out for them. So there's many, many signs that this work really makes a difference. We see it, in our organizational health survey, as I pointed out. We see it in feedback. It just came my way last week, and somebody had pointed out that it is very evident that this company cares about well-being, just given the focus we have on our intranet and the continued posts and mentions of well-being. So it's very evident that, to me, now I recognize I'm a little biased in this area, but it is very evident to me that what we have planted along the way continues to show and has really been a significant contributor to the culture that we're trying to build here at Cenovus.
Well, you're absolutely right. Culture builds, and culture is as experienced by workers at all levels, right? So the idea of a baseline level of mental health literacy when someone says, I'm not myself today. Well, in order for them to have even said that statement, they had to have the feeling that this is going to land well, this is going to be accepted, and I'm not going to be just chased off site for saying that I'm not myself today. I think I'm not able to concentrate quite right. I'm not sure I'd torque all the bolts right to make sure this thing doesn't blow up. And so it's a safety sensitive job. So they know that, oh, I can express that I'm not myself today. I'm not going to be negatively impacted on that. I'm not going to be sent home. But then that also creates conversations around, well, I'm just kind of wondering, is it about the work that we're doing that causes you or impacts you, right? And it opens those doors to be able to talk about the work and the worker, not just a focus on the worker. And that sounds like just an awesome culture that you're building. And I'm sure it's not perfect in every sector. No organization is perfect, but it's great that you're able to be seeing that fruit and lining up the data both quantitatively as you look at the myriad of data available to you, and as well the anecdotal stuff. And you hear that, well, people do care, and you hear those qualitative comments on an organizational health survey. And so that's absolutely wonderful. That is a great success.
Yeah, I thank you very much. It's a great success for everybody to own in this organization. And to your point, I mean, this work it's a journey, and it is like any other culture work, right? So we have had great success, and we still have opportunities to continue to make things better. And also, we see external and just tremendous challenges our society is facing with regards to mental health, well-being, physical illness, an enormous amount of challenges. So the need and requirements for this work is only going to grow. We need to continue to hold that focus and prioritize this work.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the FlourishDX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow FlourishDX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the FlourishDX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
And so in your current mental health strategy, obviously you have lots of actions, lots of things that you're doing. Is there anything currently going on that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned our commitment with our Not Myself Today program, and we continue to focus on that quarterly. We have a strong focus here on leadership development, knowing that leaders are critical to how we implement our strategy, and leaders are really critical to the success of their people and the success of our organization. And very recently, so just the beginning of this year, we stood up our employee resource group focused and dedicated just on mental health. So that is a new inclusion network here at Cenovus. It's one of 6 inclusion networks that we have that are employee-led and executive-sponsored inclusion networks here at Cenovus. So that is really exciting work. I'm very, very proud to help support those dedicated group of individuals who are making a real difference for our people here at Cenovus.
Wow. Okay, so this is probably the first I've heard of an inclusion network for folks with mental health challenges. I've heard lots around newcomers groups, people that have English as a second language, people that are from equity deserving groups. But in this network then, who comes? Who shows up? What do they do together?
So our network is open to all staff. We recognize its importance to foster mental health for everybody. And it recognizes that we all face mental health challenges. Their aim and their goal is that together we can work to reduce stigma. We can create that more trusting and safer workplace environment. They aim to increase awareness, to bring education, also to bring staff together in that real, safe, compassionate community. They are a group that advocates for mental health. It's an opportunity to provide input to our corporate mental health and well-being strategy, and to work with me and alongside me with our program development, our resource and tools offerings. And the group also helps to remove barriers for people. I would say, one of the greatest advantages is these are actually our employees who are living, breathing, working on the ground. And so they have some really unique insights that are very helpful to help me understand, what are those challenges our people are facing? What are the barriers? And how can we look for more meaningful ways to reduce those barriers and to provide people with, supports and benefits that actually are going to make a difference. So we've already seen great success in the network being able to create just greater awareness of our corporate strategy and our programs and our resources as they're able to get into, local areas that I'm not always able to get to. We've been able to really highlight and showcase the many different tools and support resources we have here as an organization. And they, in just a short amount of time, have built a very supportive community amongst themselves, and just continue to inspire me every day, because these are such passionate people that are out there, in a volunteer capacity off the side of their desk, just working to make our workplace, more mentally healthy and well and safer for all.
That's great. But your workforce is really geographically diverse. For those of you who are maybe unaware of Western Canada, it's a big place. People are spread out. You have people who are working out in camp where they leave home, they drive or fly to a camp, they stay there for a period of time, and then come home for a period of time and go in and out. Is this network primarily people who are based at headquarters, or have you been able to get out to the field? Who takes part in this?
Yeah, so again, everybody has the opportunity, and it's such an incredible development opportunity for folks to get involved with this network, especially our inclusion network leads who are actually working with our executive sponsors. But to your point, we do have a number of network leads that are from all over across our organization in various different roles. And one of the network leads is actually responsible for a champion of local network ambassadors, is what I want to say. And the goal and the hope is that there will be an ambassador from every location in our organization. And that's quite aspirational, but we're actually very close to being there and having kind of one ambassador from every area. And that has been a great success and a great ally for my work too. So, for example, Mental Health Week in May, we were able to we had some physical materials. The Not Myself Today has these, program has these amazing mood buttons. And so they're a real highlight. There are these great colorful buttons. And the idea is to encourage discussion and conversation about the full range of emotions that we all come with. My favorite button personally is the hangry button. But we were able to use these local leads to get the materials to all of our sites and all of our locations, which was a real gift. We've always we've always struggled. And as we get larger and more geographically dispersed as an organization, this has been a real asset to helping to bring this, whether it's physical material or whether it's just awareness of programs or initiatives we have going on, to really bring that to the local level and vice versa, right? So we get that information back from those local level ambassadors to help us impact and tweak and adjust our programs and resources to actually be meaningful for what matters across our organization.
Right, and I'm guessing you leverage, a solution like Microsoft Teams or something like that, right, to be able to bring people together, like the wonders of a mobile phone, of how, people can connect from almost everywhere. Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely. And that, we stood up during the pandemic, right when everybody shifted home. We stood up this incredible Microsoft Teams channel, which became our hub, our well-being hub, and it still stands strong today. And as part of that hub, we do a virtual meetup now. We're about once a month we usually have an expert speaking on a topic, anything and everything related to well-being. It's usually focused around, an external recognition day that we have. So for example, June was Men's Health Month, and we brought in experts to speak about Men's Health Month. But the point of that is I've been very intentional to keep that platform as a virtual platform, because it allows everybody the same access to the same content and puts us all in the same playing field, whether you're joining from camp or one of our sites, or whether you're joining from the US or our Asia Pacific region. And we're all together, we're all the same when we're joining virtually through Teams. So it's been a huge asset. And yes, we know all the challenges that come with technology and virtual connections, which, has some limitations to in-person connections. There's also been a tremendous amount of benefits that we have seen and realized by being able to have everybody be in the same place at the same time.
Right. And so the network itself, of course, it has benefits for the people who are attending and receiving support, receiving resources. But you talked about the two-way communication aspect of it, and for listeners, employee participation, worker participation, is a core feature of both ISO 45003 and the National Standard of Canada for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace. Employee participation, feedback loops, different ways of gathering diverse input from all across the organization is really, really important. And so you wouldn't have a mental health network unless you had done the work years before to say, I'm not myself today, and we won't penalize and fire people who have mental health problems. We won't run them off the job site. We won't blacklist them or things like that. So your culture is really, I don't want to say evolving, but it's becoming much more nuanced and complex, and enables you to gather different data and do different things. And so from a maturity perspective, some listeners, I think, might be listening or viewing and saying, oh my goodness, we're not there. But your journey was really kind of a step-by-step endeavor, where you began with awareness, you had champions, and you learned from things, and you've continually evolved and stuck with a mental health and well-being strategy. And you leveraged the experience of safety over the previous 20, 30 years. I'm guessing that there's a lot of organizational maturity there that's like, okay, this is just the next evolution of our well-being journey.
Absolutely. It's like you have a lens into what's happened here over the last number of years, because that's exactly it, Ian. And for all the times that I've listened to experts on this podcast and picked up various tips, and also had moments of feeling discouraged about where we are not, I absolutely hope that people realize where they are and that we all start from somewhere. And this work, there is never an end point, which can be a real challenge to this work, because once we reach one milestone, we're always thinking ahead to what's next and where's the next place that we want to go. My hope is in realizing that in the journey of mental health and well-being, we are on the same journey that physical safety is. And in a number of years, we're going to be in that place too, where we are, really comprehensively assessing, mitigating those psychosocial hazards in the same way that we do physical hazards, and that we have that full system approach for protecting our workers and preventing harm from psychosocial hazards as we do with physical safety hazards. So I think we're just a few years away, and it's really exciting to be a part of that.
Well, and I think, you're operating in a few different regulatory environments as you're an international company. In Canada, there are very few occupational health and safety regulations that require a systemic approach to managing psychosocial hazards in the workplace. The Canada Labour Code is really the only definitive requirement at this point that I'm aware of where you have to manage psychosocial risks that may contribute to violence and harassment. But see, what you're sort of implying is that, maybe Cenovus's hazard assessment for psychosocial hazard, the things about how work is organized and put together and how people relate to each other, isn't necessarily as standardized as, say, maybe its approach to lockout procedures. You've got a dangerous machine that you're servicing, and so we put locks on all the on switches so no one can turn on this machine while someone's servicing it. Those systems are really, really mature. The idea of being able to talk about the psychological impact of work and the psychosocial factors, hey, yeah, as a society, we're just not as aware of the terminology and how to, approach this. But I would guess on an informal basis, however, given that executive leadership has talked about the importance of mental health at work, the importance of safety-sensitive work, I'm not myself today, that there must be elements of the work, though, in the last 7 years that Cenovus has probably looked at and said, hey, you know what? The way we do this, yeah, that's unacceptable because it probably impacts the mental health of our workers. And I'm guessing there have been some informal changes that have happened, even though there's not necessarily a formal psychosocial job hazard assessment checklist. Am I right in guessing that?
You absolutely are, Ian. And as we work to progress the conversation and just bring awareness to what is psychological health and safety. And of course, it starts so foundationally when as soon as you say that, people go, oh yeah, it's psychological safety. And that's about being able to speak up. And yes, that's part of it. And also it's different. So it is about bringing just awareness as to what we're talking about. And I really love, and I wanted to share because I saw in an article just yesterday, some definitions around psychological health and safety that really resonated. And it was an article put out by ROWE, which is the Revolutionaries of Wellbeing in New Zealand. They're doing some incredible work. They had an article, and it was Grant Nicholson who said, I'm going to read it so I make sure I get this right. Psychosocial risk encompasses work design, environment, and relationships. It's about how we think, feel, and behave at work. I loved it then went on to describe Dr. Dougal Sutherland, who is the CEO of Umbrella Wellbeing, who's introduced a term called mental safety, which combines psychological safety, where workers feel they're able to raise concerns, and psychosocial safety, a commitment to preventing mental harm at work. So this term, mental safety, I loved it. It was like a aha for me. So you're right, we are absolutely doing a lot of things. We have a lot of programs, initiatives across the company that are aligning here in Canada to those 13 factors, that are aligning to our ISO 45003 and to labor code, focusing on, for example, our leadership development program that is so foundational and impactful here at Cenovus, and thinking about a company-wide campaign we have called Expect Respect, where we really focus on creating a respectful workplace environment where recognizing that everybody who comes to work has the right to feel respected and valued, and that we all know what our expectations are around that. We have a real focus on diversity and inclusion here, and making sure that everybody who works here feels safe, and that they matter, and that they're, whatever background they come from, that they are appreciated for who they are. So we have a number of, programs in place, and really thinking about those factors. How is work designed? How is work done and executed? Our work environments themselves. We have a number of initiatives that are really focused on that fulsome psychological health and safety focus. And now it's about putting all the good work together, telling the right story, and being able to build on that holistic approach. And really, that is what our mental health and well-being strategy is. It is about protection, prevention, and promotion, and support. So we are doing all the right things, and we are on a journey, just like the rest of everybody else is too.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to highlight that journey. And quite often we think of, well, we need to be able to demonstrate, and we need to be able to show our risk assessment. Well, yeah, like obviously tangible proof is important. If we look back in the safety realm, right, 25, 30 years ago, large progressive construction companies and mining companies and people in the energy sector started to demand of their subcontractors, show us your safety record, show us your safety audits, demonstrate that you are a safe employer. And that really changed the industry. Now let's fast forward to 2024. Those types of things might become the norm 5 years from now, when Cenovus may be able to ask its subcontractors, please show us your mental health programs, please show us your fit for duty program, and that Cenovus might become a real change leader, or other employers may become like that as we really increase the knowledge of what it's like to work safely, and that's both physical and mental health. And so I think there's so much room for companies like Cenovus to lead the way that way, because I really look back and saw that it wasn't necessarily government regulation that drove the safety culture in the energy sector. It was individual companies signing leadership charters, safety charters. Certainly government and everything had something to do with that, but it wasn't just regulation that was driving it. And there was a real honest desire to see everyone go home safe. And the energy sector really pioneered a lot of that. So that's exciting times. And so I guess if you had some advice for another occupational health nurse or a safety professional working in a company that doesn't necessarily seem to be interested in employee mental health, what advice would you give that professional who cares but isn't seeing that replicated around them or reflected around them?
Yeah, what a great question, because I think this is a challenge that many people face, and I also think it's two ways. I think organizations and executive leaders have a real responsibility. You speak about governments. I would say it's a responsibility that organizations, governments, individuals must take on when we look at those statistics and the data, and we feel it for ourselves and recognize the impacts that we are all facing. We all have a really important role in making things better for our people and our society. So, for people who are in this work, I would say I always think back to when I was doing my nursing degree, and somebody once told me that nursing is about the science and the art of what you're doing. So I think about that very often. And the science is about, if you're going to be doing this work, making sure that you have the right knowledge, that you are up to date with the latest research and trends and the data that is out there, because it does change and evolve, and it's important that we stay on top of that, because that's how we build our credibility. It's how we build our brand and our trust for what we're going in and we're speaking about. It's being able to, hone and use those skills that we have, being able to critically think and assess the data that we are seeing, and just being able to make this work fit within an organization. And the second part is that art part. So it's about using those skills of compassion and empathy to connect with workers and our leaders across all levels. It's about being able to communicate effectively. It's about having that real systems thinking approach where you're able to piece together all the dots and understand how everything impacts everything else, and to have that business acumen for effective, sustainable, and strategic alignment with an organization. Because it's one thing to have this knowledge and the skills, it's another thing to know how it fits within your organization and your business. And as we spoke about, it's really recognizing that this work is culture work. It takes time. So I think about it much as, the small wins and the low-hanging fruit, just as much as those big rocks. So when you are thinking about a strategy, really thinking about that roadmap that you are trying to build. The other part for me is doing this work, it's one thing to come in with our agenda and knowing, what should and what has to be done. But the way you're going to get any kind of traction is thinking about, what does the organization need? What's going to fit? What do those executive leaders need? What do they think about mental health? What are their perceptions and their notions? And actually, one of the best questions I ever heard was, if you get the opportunity to speak to those executive leaders, to ask them, what keeps you up at night? Because without actually having that knowledge, you may not be putting through a meaningful solution that's going to gain that traction and that momentum to help things start moving across the line. And more than anything, this work can be challenging because it's like any other culture work. It's deep heart work, it's head work and heart work. And so just maintaining that passion, really thinking about why it was that you ever wanted to get involved in this. Like what for you is meaningful, so that you're constantly coming back to that purpose that you have, because that will help. Oh boy, I'm falling out here. Just one moment. That will help you, stick to that and find that grit, because some days you will have those wins and other days you will be pushing uphill, and that's okay too. For me, it's really about that network of people that I've been able to build and be inspired by and learn from, constantly stay motivated. And also in your organization, to find those champions, to find your allies. I always tell people, have that elevator pitch ready to go, because you never know who you're going to run into. And at what point you can use a conversation to build a business case, or just to use your strategic opportunity to think about how you can get something over the line. And most of all, just remember that, yes, we impact organizations and societies, but most of all, there's hardly a day goes by where this work doesn't touch an individual. And that's what we need to hold on to.
Yeah, 100%. You just gave a masterclass in the last 3.5 minutes. That's awesome, Leora, because when we're thinking about the impact that this has on individual workers, about 80% of my time right now is working with folks with mental health problems, helping them return to work. 20% is in the prevention area. And I hear stories every day, and I talk with people who have been harmed in part by the work that they do, but they also have returned to life. And so when you think about the harm that we're preventing and the fact that people are getting back into their lives because they work in a very supportive environment, the mental health problem happened maybe because of work, outside of work, or how work and home intertwined. Whatever the case is that you are both preventing and you are helping to make sure that things don't become more severe, and you're returning people to health and productivity. And that's just that full spectrum. It's the integrated approach that's talked about many times on this podcast. And so that is so encouraging. So listeners, I hope you were taking copious notes in the last 5 minutes because Leora just hit that one home. And so Leora, for listeners and viewers on the podcast, if they want to learn more or they want to be able to connect with you, if they've got some questions, maybe they're struggling with some things in their own organization, is there any way that folks can connect with you?
Absolutely. I'm always happy to connect with people, to meet new people, like-minded people, and grow my own network, because it comes down to that, having that network that we all support one another. So by all means, listeners can find me on LinkedIn, and please do feel free to connect at any point.
Well, awesome. Thanks so much for joining us in the conversation today. I have enjoyed this so much, and I look forward to connecting in the future as well. And now that we've made this connection, so thanks so much for joining me today. And listeners, you can tune in and find your podcast on wherever your favorite platform is, and let others know. As Leora indicated, she's listened to this podcast for quite some time. We've got many episodes stored in the vault. And listening to this podcast, I think, is a real masterclass in navigating the arena of workplace mental health, psychosocial injury prevention, psychosocial hazard control. There's so many words out there that describe what we're doing. And so thanks for adding to that today, Leora.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a privilege. Thank you so much for having me, Ian.
Thanks so much.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. To stay up to date with the latest on psychological injury prevention, follow Flourish DX on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast at www.psychealthandsafety.com.